One is an ancient Buddhist parable turned historical drama. The other is that, but taking place in England during the War of the Roses. Like the actual War of the Roses. Like, I know we've done an episode on the War of the Roses, but there's like an actual event. Whatever. Onibaba. They Remade It. And welcome back to another episode of They Remade It. I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
And I gotta tell you, it's kind of weird having senioritis when you're an adult, because I have just gotten done with my last week of work before going on my honeymoon, and my God, does everything just feel like a slog. Not this, though, obviously.
Oh, I should hope so. And way to flex on everyone.
Yeah, obviously.
Unnecessarily?
Suckers.
Maybe?
Suckers! I got tickets to get out of this fucking country for a week.
Ooh, the country. La-di-da.
I will not tell you where, for legal purposes.
I already know where, but...
Well, I mean everyone else, you know.
Yeah, no, I know.
Plausible deniability and that sort of thing. Can't prove it.
Well, hopefully you watch some things while you're abroad.
I'm not even sure what we'll do specifically. We're just going to a resort and just going to hang out and be relaxed. So if there's movies involved, then there will be movies involved.
You don't just travel to another country and then stay inside all day and watch movies?
I mean, I guess I could, but... You know, I will need to eat.
Oh yeah, damn.
And plus they have endless drinks. I'm gonna come back sunburned and like liver damaged. Anyway, it hasn't been too long since our last recording, so I'm sure there hasn't been too much you've been watching. But what you've been watching?
Oh yes, we'll keep it simple. One movie, one game, and we'll go through. So I finally caught one of the few things that I had written up last year that I failed to get around to. So 2025's Dangerous Animals, I ended up finally seeing. I don't know that one actually. I had tried to watch it and I got distracted. This was like a couple months ago, and I got distracted and I couldn't find it again because it was taken off the service that I was using. But it is on Shudder, because it is apparently Shudder produced, which I didn't know.
A lot lately.
Yeah, they have. And the vast majority of it is garbage, but as someone that likes horror, I put up with it. So,
horror is one of the few things where you can kind of get away with releasing a lot of garbage.
Yeah, it's just such a wide breadth that I don't really understand what they're going for at times. But this isn't Shuddercast. Anyways, Dangerous Animals. Basically, for people that don't recall the trailer or didn't catch it, basically a serial killer on the high seas. He has fake swim with the shark events, and he'll take couples out there, basically kill the boyfriend or the husband, and then lock up the female partner so that he can record feeding them to sharks later, and he like gets off on it.
Wow.
It's at the very least it's pretty harrowing. There's some pretty decent shots in this that look pretty naturalistic. I'm sure there's a fair amount of it that is green screen, but I couldn't tell, and part of that beauty is the fact that most of it is shot at nighttime. Correctly shot at nighttime, not like day for night shooting. And I like the fact that it's sort of self-contained. Very rarely are you outside of this small houseboat, so you really feel the claustrophobia and the terror. It also does a good job, with the sharks, because it's a horror movie about sharks eating people, where the sharks are like realistic sharks that are basically being tempted to attack people because this guy is like, he's chumming the water and he'll like tease them and jab at them a little bit so that they attack. And then he records it all and he has a closet full of VHS tapes of like different people he's fed to sharks.
A shark horror movie where the shark is not the bad guy. Interesting.
That's about where I stop because it takes a little long to get going and it starts and stops once it does get going. There are like 3 or 4 false endings that play on horror movie tropes of like, oh, the tension of is she going to get out of it, and no, she's not going to get out of it. And I mean, that's something that I can't really complain about as a trope, but within the span of a 90-minute movie, you do it 4 times, and I'm kind of rolling my eyes a little bit. And none of the performances are all that great. I don't remember who I don't remember who the main female actress is. I should probably look it up, but I liked her well enough for what she was doing. But this what do you call it? Serial killer guy. I could not remember the term for someone that kills a bunch of people. Imagine that. But the serial killer, played by Jai Courtney, he's a little over the top for me in this, and I don't mean in a sort of camp sort of way, more like kind of obnoxiously chewing the scenery at times. I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle on this one. I like things that it does, but I can't say that it's particularly great.
Yeah, I mean, with a premise like that, it's either going to be some kind of cult classic or it's just going to be kind of eh.
And it was kind of eh, especially because, I mean, it's not really it's not a kill heavy horror movie. And when I say that, it is, but it isn't, because that's not the focus. But the few scenes where people are getting killed, it is intense because the entire movie is built around that set piece. So, you do something right. Now, for the game, I've been playing a couple different things as I usually do, but something that just came out, as of recording this, probably close to a week ago, but something that I kind of rushed through really quickly was Forbidden Solitaire.
Okay.
It's a horror game that I played the demo for last Next Fest, I believe, Steam Next Fest. And it's essentially, it's one of those fake OS games where you're on a computer inside of the game, and the premise is that you found an old PC CD-ROM video game called Forbidden Solitaire from like a flea market or something, and you start playing through it, and the game's haunted, and whatever. It's the actual conceit of it has been done to death, but what I really enjoy is that it doesn't just rest on that. It actually has mechanics similar to what Inscription did with the card game premise, where it's more than a card game, but the actual mechanics are fun and you can get into. Because it's solitaire in that you are constantly matching up cards that are on the board to either fight an enemy or solve a puzzle. But there's different mechanics involved in that. Sometimes you'll get a joker which you can use to have a positive or potentially negative effect on the board, or you can accidentally click on a card that has a maggot coming out of it, and you take damage. Not only do you take damage, but you don't get to add the card to the top of your pile, so you have to start from 0. Without fully going into it from the start, obviously some of this doesn't make sense, but I think it's really robust for what it is. Unfortunately, it is a single player narrative experience, which should make sense based on what I described earlier. I did it in about 4 hours, and it's one of those games that really wants you. It has you either wanting more or just a mode where you can play with the card puzzles that it has set up, which is something I remember folks had to say about Inscription too when it came out, and eventually Inscription just created a mode where you could just do that, and play that first section of the game over and over again. So I don't know, maybe that's something that's in the future for this, but I don't think so, because it's structured a little different, and it's not like a roguelite in any way, which Inscription kind of is. So I don't know. I really like the game. I do. Uh, it does more right than it does wrong, and it looks great. It totally nails that '90s PC game aesthetic. As someone that played many a PC game off of an old CD-ROM or a pirated CD-ROM that I found in a bin, it totally does that for me.
Yeah, fair enough. I I truly just can't get behind deck builders or similar because it just every time it does, I'm like, this feels like it's going to be my whole day trying to figure this out, and I don't care for it.
Well, to be fair, Forbidden Solitaire is a card game, but it is not a deck builder, because it is just 52. It's a set of 52 cards.
Oh, nice.
But again, it's hard for me to explain without going in depth into the details of it. It's like, okay, well, you can only, you have a card pulled from the top of your deck. You can only pick a card off the board that is one number higher or lower, unless you activate a Joker card. It gets into that. But you're not like building a deck and using cards that have different stats to fight other cards with different stats. It is like Solitaire as a puzzle game.
Gotcha. All right, that feels more bearable. I just couldn't get into Bellatra, man.
Oh, I hear you. I really liked Balatro, but it was also such a time sink that I didn't. I stopped before I got as invested as a lot of other people did.
Fair. Probably healthy.
Yeah. But that is about it for me. So what about you?
Nothing on the watching side, but I've actually had two different games I've been playing since we last recorded, amazingly. One that came out here very recently, I think probably about the same time yours did, was this one called Motor Slice, which is, I had been following randomly here and there because the creator, it's a solo creator who'd post on YouTube occasionally. Effectively, it's just what if Shadow of the Colossus, but construction equipment instead of giants. And it's pretty fun. I love the aesthetic of it. He also cites Mirror's Edge as one of the primary inspirations, which makes a lot of sense based on the general aesthetic of like big mega structure and like high contrast, blinding white concrete over, kind of bright orange for like the aforementioned construction equipment. I'm not, I can't tell if I'm just bad at it or if sometimes the movement tech and everything in it is just kind of annoying. There's a lot of things where like, you'll do you have to do like parkour and stuff to get around. And then there'll be like little bonus things you can find based on doing that. And some of them are kind of just bullshit. But I don't know how much of that is just my own problem or the game. So I've been playing it here and there. It's a short experience, but I've been taking my time with it. So I don't know. I'll see how that one pans out. It's also at times it has kind of that weird thing of like, it's very deliberately kind of making the character is very explicitly meant to be a kind of anime-esque tomboy girl kind of thing. And they kind of lean into it on occasionally. And I can't tell how much of it is charming, how much of it is just me seeing just a bit too much of the creator's kink, which like, at the end of the day, the true great artists are always going to put some of that. It's like, there's been jokes about the author's barely disguised fetish kind of thing. But even then, when you're playing it, it just feels a little weird too, where I'm like, I feel like I have too much of an active hand in this now.
I like
but
I at least like the aesthetic of the environment
specifically.
Oh,
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. And it's just the cool movement stuff you can do. You use your like a chainsaw to get around and stuff. It's pretty interesting. And then I just like that, it's a kind of a dystopic kind of thing, but instead of it being like some crazy amalgamation, like kind of like, like the Surge kind of thing of, robotic monster kind of thing, it literally is just like a giant dump truck or a giant crane that like from a construction site that is sentient and you have to fight it.
I see that.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I just like it. I like what it's going for with its style. So But yeah, that one's pretty good. Just very kind of a quick and easy one. It's very much one of those ones that it feels like, someone could probably, like once someone gets good at the tech of it, they could probably speed run it inside 30 minutes, if not less. But I am not that kind of person, so I'll take my time with it. The other one I've started playing, which this is hardly a new one, but and everyone's talked to death. Schedule One, the drug production and dealing game, still currently in early access. And honestly, it's been pretty fun. It's been pretty addictive. There's no pun intended on that one. But yeah, it's got a good gameplay loop to it, and it's just robust with its systems that it feels like it's manageable to start wanting to get more complicated with it without it becoming immediately like factorial levels of having to manage, automate, and do a bunch of bullshit. It's pretty much just like, if you don't want to have to worry about some of the deeper aspects of it, you really don't have to. You're just kind of, it's a game where it does not take the science of drug manufacturing seriously at all. And it's just like literally like, oh, you want to make a new strain of weed? Okay, take all of the product you've made and now toss it into a literal stand mixer and mix it in with literally anything from bananas to Viagra, which is a literal thing I had to do at one point, and it is my best-selling product.
Mm.
So it's interesting in that way. It's clearly trying to be tongue-in-cheek. Doesn't feel like there's a whole lot of consequences at times, but at the same time, it doesn't really feel like it's trying to do anything too drastic with it. It's like, being arrested or being killed doesn't really hold that much weight, which I guess is fine so it doesn't become too frustrating, but still.
Yeah, it seems like more of a relaxing thing in a sense than anything. I had a buddy that was playing this for a while last year. And that's the vibe that I got from it.
Yeah, it's very much, I guess relaxing. Relaxing definitely would be the better call for it. There's no real, you have to do light stuff of you can only deposit so much money in the bank without having to run it through a business to launder it. And it's all very minor stuff. So it feels like Fisher Price Breaking Bad in a way. Which is perfectly fine. It's interesting. It's got just enough challenge to it that I want to keep going with it. Without it also being kind of thing where you have to start min-maxing to high hell before it becomes before anything becomes viable. It's just as easy just to be like, hey, I'm going to make some weed and throw it to some random people, and then that'll be that. This is for a video game, FBI, for fuck's sake. Yeah, it's pretty good. I'll probably keep playing that one for a while. But yeah, I think otherwise that is it. It has been, like I said, not too long since the last recording, and also it's been hellishly busy. Like I said, getting ready to go out of the country.
We made quick work of that intro, didn't we?
Hooray! For once, we didn't prattle on.
No.
Oh, man, that means we have to actually make content now? Fuck. I guess that's as good of a segue as any to get us into the strange and fascinating tales that come from Shin Buddhism, and then also turned into an English version of this with a bunch of people from Game of Thrones. It is Onibaba and the Dreadful. We start off in 1964 with Onibaba, directed by Kaneto Shindo. By the way, this is a Japanese film, so good luck with me. Directed and screenplay by Kaneto Shindo. Produced by Toshio Konya. Its cast is made up of Nobuko Odawa as the older woman, Jitsuko Yoshimura as the younger woman, and Kei Sato as Hachi. Also has Taiji Toneyama as Ushi, and Kujiki Uno as the Masked Samurai. Set in the Japanese countryside near Kyoto in the mid-14th century, Two fleeing soldiers during a period of a civil war are ambushed in a large field of tall, thick reeds and murdered by an older woman and her younger daughter-in-law. The two women loot dead soldiers, strip them of their armor and weapons, and drop their bodies into a deep pit hidden in a field. The next day, they take the armor and weapons to a merchant named Ushi and trade them for some food. The merchant tells them that news of the war, which is driving people across the country to desperation. As they leave, Ushi makes a sexual proposition to the older woman, who immediately rebuffs him. A neighbor named Hachi, who has been to war, returns. The two women ask about Kishi, who was the older woman's son and the younger woman's husband, and who had been drafted alongside Hachi. Hachi tells them that they deserted the war and that Kishi was later killed when they were caught stealing food from some farmers. The older woman warns the younger woman to stay away from Hachi, whom she blames for her son's death. Hachi begins to show interest in the younger woman, and, despite being warned to stay away from Hachi, she is seduced by him. She begins to sneak out every night to run to his hut and have sex with him. The older woman learns of the relationship and is both angry and jealous. She, in turn, tries to seduce Hachi herself, but is coldly rebuffed. She then pleads with him to not take her daughter-in-law away, since she cannot kill and rob passing soldiers without her help. One night, while Hachi and the younger woman are together, a lost samurai wearing a mask forces the older woman to guide him out of the field. He claims to wear this mask to protect his incredibly handsome face from harm. However, the woman tricks him into plunging into his death into the pit where the women dispose of their other victims. She climbs down and steals the samurai's possessions and, with great difficulty, his mask, revealing that the samurai's face is actually horribly disfigured underneath. At night, as the younger woman goes to see Hachi, the older woman blocks her path wearing the samurai's robes and the mask, frightening the girl into running home. During the day, the older woman further convinces the younger woman that the demon that she saw that night was real, as a punishment for her affair with Hachi. The younger woman avoids Hachi during the day, but continues to try to see him at night. During a storm, the older woman once again terrifies the younger woman with the mask, but Hachi, tired of being ignored, finds the younger woman and has sex with her right there in the grass as the mother-in-law watches. Creepy. The older woman realizes that, despite all her warnings, her daughter-in-law wants to be with Hachi. Hachi returns to his hut, where he discovers that another deserter is stealing his food. The deserter abruptly grabs a spear and stabs Hachi, killing him. The older woman discovers that, after getting wet in the rain, the mask is impossible to remove. She reveals her scheme to her daughter-in-law and pleads for her help to take off the mask. The younger woman agrees to remove the mask after the older woman promises not to interfere with her relationship with Hachi. After failing to pull it off, the young woman breaks off the mask with a mallet. Under the mask, the older woman's face is now disfigured, just as the dead samurai had been. It is implied that the previously removable mask was accursed by supernatural means, binding itself permanently to the wearer's face by the power of the rain, a metaphysical symbol of Buddhist punishment. However, the truth behind the implied origin is never truly revealed. The younger woman, now believing her mother-in-law has turned into an actual demon, flees. The older woman runs after her, crying out that she is a human being and not a demon. The young woman leaps over the pit of bodies, and the older woman leaps after her. Just as she does, though, the film ends. Now, jumping way forward into a 2026 version of this film, this very year, called The Dreadful. It's directed by Natasha Kermani, written by Natasha Kermani. Its cast is made up of Sophie Turner as Anne, Kit Harington as Iago, Marcia Gay Harden as Morwen, Lawrence O'Furian as Seamus, and Jonathan Howard as Brother Penrose. Set in England during the War of the Roses of the 15th century, Anne and her mother-in-law Morwen scrape by while awaiting the return of Seamus from the wars. Introspective, sweet, and devout, Anne contrasts with Morwen, a crude grifter bent only on survival. Despite this, the two are devoted to each other. Iago, Seamus' childhood friend, returns from war claiming that they had both deserted, but Seamus was killed by thieves in the night. Morwen doubts him, but his tale confirms Anne's dream having seen Seamus' death before her. Anne begins glimpsing an armored knight off in the woods meanwhile. As Iago begins to court Anne, Morwen warns that he has always envied Seamus in what he has, and will try to steal Anne away from Morwen. She begins to frighten Anne with threats of the Knights of Hell will drag her down to hell with them if she abandons her duty towards Morwen and forgets about her late husband. When a ship wrecks nearby, the women scavenge it. Morwen had actually, just beforehand, secretly killed any survivors, claiming that they had drowned. She then later slits the throat of a pilgrim priest, one Friar Penrose, for his relics, as a horrified Anne helps hide the body. She justifies her crime by claiming that the friar was a charlatan and a thief. As time goes on and Anne grows closer to Iago, he comforts her that the knight she has continued to see in her visions is likely not a real person. However, after dreaming of Morwen as a demon, selfishly eating all the food she can find around her, she decides to sleep with Iago. He urges her to leave Morwen and live with him, but Anne confesses that Morwen both needs and frightens her at the same time. Morwen, in turn, tightens her hold, using Anne as a distraction to kill and rob a traveler on the road. As she begins to dispose of the body, Anne finds a horse figurine on the victim, which she takes as a sign of the demonic knight she's been seeing. As Iago comes to the cottage in order to see Anne, Morwen threatens him with a knife to send him away. She then terrifies Anne with further tales of the Knights of Hell should she try to leave her. After an internal spiritual struggle, Anne drugs Morwen and sneaks away to spend a joyful full day with Iago. When Morwen awakens, she encounters the knight herself and follows him out into the woods, where she sees the lovers together. The knight, also seeing the display before him, collapses forward, clawing at his helmet. In this moment of weakness, Morwen comes from behind and kills him for his purse. After their day together, Anne confides her envy of the local lady of the realm's wealth and her fears that the demon Mammon has been influencing her to Iago, who assures her that such feelings are completely natural. Anne resolves to live with Iago, defying Morwen, who in turn reacts very poorly to this. The couple's new life quickly turns sour when Anne catches Iago in a lie about how Seamus had died. Iago in turn confesses that in truth is that Seamus had grown ruthless and terrifying in war, murdering their own comrades for their money. He then killed an armored knight and stole his decorated helmet. Upon wearing it, however, he began to scream as if it was burning his skin. In fear, Iago fled and later lied about how Seamus had died in order to win Anne over. In flashback, we see that as Morwen removes the dead knight's helmet, the very same helmet that we had just seen Seamus take, she discovers in turn that she had killed her own son, his face now showing to be grotesquely diseased and demonic looking. She then decides to don the helmet for herself in order to frighten Anne back into her arms, but instead in turn burns her and she cannot take it back off, just as Seamus couldn't. Anne manages to split the helmet with a cross from the cottage, revealing the now disfigured Morwen is covered in boils and pustules, begging her for forgiveness for her sins. The cursed helmet then restores itself, like straight up, literally demonically restores itself. And so Anne, unafraid, picks it up despite Morwen's warnings and appears like an angel to Morwen before Morwen goes permanently blind. In the following days, Anne has rejected both Iago and Morwen's claims of ownership over her. In the ending scene, we see her retrieve the helmet from a chest she has hidden in the woods and listens as she can hear the light whispers coming from it. Her further thoughts left ambiguous. So really did away with the whole subtlety, maybe it's real, maybe it's not thing at the very end.
Yeah. It certainly was a movie. That's for sure.
I mean, I'm a sucker for that time period, but hey, I'll get into that.
Yeah. At the very least, let's certainly do a full circle. Okay, so Marcia Gay Harden played Morwen in 2026's The Dreadful. We just discussed this. She was also Allison in 1998's Meet Joe Black.
Oh, okay.
She was married to Jeffrey Tambor. She was setting up the birthday party for Anthony Hopkins.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. Okay, that's it for Full Circle. So.
Really? That's... Huh.
Yeah. Okay, I'm moving on. So, getting into things right off the bat, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts, especially on The Dreadful, because Onibaba we've both watched, assumedly at least twice now, because we watched it together
yes.
early last year.
Like it was our first movie night, if I remember right.
It might have been.
I think it was
I mean, the
specifically because
first one was Never Ending Story, and I was the only one that showed up, but it still counts.
that's fair. It was the first one we were all there for.
Okay, if that's the case, that is wild. But so I am curious specifically to hear your thoughts on the Dreadful once we get to that point, because
Mhm.
I watched it. I watched it first since I had already seen Onibaba before. Um, and even still, not having Onibaba fresh in my mind, the Dreadful ended in I very Gene Shalit esque was like the title did not lie.
Oh wow.
I I I I think this is like a solid. I haven't reviewed it. I haven't put it on Letterboxd yet, but I think this is like a solid 1.5 star affair for me.
Really? Wow.
I don't. I really don't think there's much behind it. I think it kind of looks gross, except for some of the forestry scenes are well shot, but a lot of the other stuff looks it kind of gross. It kind of beats you over the head with what it's doing. There's little to no subtlety or seemingly actual messaging behind anything that's happening, even though this is based on a parable with very clear outlined morals. And then
Sure.
yeah, the ending was was confusing to me as well. I was just like, why did they make this decision? Why
Yeah.
was this why is this what was done? There were a ton of things compounded. I actively did not like this.
I mean that's not too surprising, I guess. Like I said, I think I'm also just a sucker for this general time period. That being kind of just England during the War of the Roses is a very tumultuous period of history for a lot of reasons. Um, and I honestly just kind of liked the idea of this parable being told in that light, simply for the fact of I think there's enough weight behind the original story that translating it into a Christian lens honestly makes a lot of sense. It's actually also funny that this actually happens not too far off from the same time period that Onibaba is originally meant to, because Onibaba takes place in the 14th century and this takes place in the 15th, um, which I just find to be very interesting now that I thought about it. Um, but I get what you mean with the subtleties and everything. Like the ending definitely lost me some of what I was when I was going through it. I should also mention because it glosses over it in the Wikipedia synopsis, which by the way, horribly written. Whoever's behind that, you need to figure out your grammar structure. Anyway, it glosses over the fact of when she does knock the helmet off Morwen, not only does it reform before their eyes, it also manifests like a smoky demon guy walking out of the ground. And like up until this point, throughout the whole thing, there's been this general air of kind of vague mystery around Anne and how she's feeling. We're meant to imply that she's just dealing with internal strife and that sort of thing, and just fear and the horrible dreams she's been having based on her experience and her anxieties around Morwen. And so there's a lot of moments where you think, okay, she is genuinely either hallucinating or is just manifesting her fears into this external figure who then turns out to be real in the form of the night. So it's like, oh yeah, she's not crazy. She was literally seeing a guy out in the woods and her own anxiety was just making it worse. But then it does actually turn out to be demonic and like actually a cursed suit of armor, it was specifically a helmet. And it's very confusing. It felt like they were, if they hadn't done that with the ending, it would have felt like at least able to tie into a bow a bit easier. But as it was, it just kind of went from, oh, a young woman dealing with like the concept of a toxic relationship in the 15th century in hyper Christianized England. It went from that to, oh no, she's literally having to deal with demons right now. That's a whole other story. Like this this went from this went from the witch to, well, I guess the witch.
Wow.
I guess the witch does have actual demons and shit, but like it's also more meant to be the story of like a young woman's independence.
Well, also, I mean, I don't know, the way he does his movies, there's kind of a thing at the end of The Witch where it's like, well, is this actually happening or is it just her? You know.
Right.
So,
And it felt like
it's still ambiguous.
it feel like if they just hadn't done the thing where the helmet comes back together and you see the demon guy, then maybe it could have kept that feeling of, is this actually happening? Is she actually hearing whispering from this demonic helmet, or is she just, is this just a manifestation of internal strife? But no, we literally see her break it off with a cross and it goes, hey, fuck you, and returns to her as a monster. Like, what? Why? Why?
And I can at least see where you're coming from in that the translation makes sense and it's an interesting place to put the parable, because
Yes.
we had that discussion when we watched Onibaba that the original parable that this is based on, aside from the specific details of the style of mask used and the fact that the mother is basically preventing her from going to Buddhist temple, like the actual moral structure of the story and the simplistic like A to B to C of it means it can be translated into any number of different time periods and settings and eras and whatever you want to call it. So I can at least appreciate whoever had the idea behind the Dreadful and thought that it might be a good adaptation. I don't think the execution worked, but I think
Even
at the very least, I I think that it's something that can work in other settings.
guess so, but even then, I do genuinely think this works really well in this setting. It's because you even mentioned, and I completely forgot about like the original parable, like you said, it's rather than it is, this woman being told off by her mother-in-law to not go to temple so she can help her murder, and then bad things happens to said murderous lady. It's like, yeah, that's a pretty straightforward parable. Most of them are like that. And the fact that it was then translated into this woman is preventing this young woman from having sex and a free life. Yeah, a bit more modernistic, a bit more progressive, especially for the time. And also adds a baggage on the young woman's side of things of, yeah, maybe she's not being pious or anything. Maybe she's just trying to have a decent life, and that's not necessarily a great thing to do. It's just slightly better than murdering innocent people. And the fact that the Dreadful still brings back in the church as a central point of it, but actually kind of uses it as both a negative and a positive. The idea of that, Morwen is using, scripture and tales of hell in order to keep her under control and to keep her in her arms. And the fact that that Anne herself is still wanting to be a pious woman, but is having her own faith used against her in order to keep doing bad things. And I just think that's a really interesting dichotomy. It's directly showing like, yeah, this is how abusive relationships work, and it's as explicit as it can get.
Well, like I said, I think that the adaptation or the idea behind the adaptation works. And I think if I read this script and saw that, I wouldn't have a problem with it. My main problem is that as a movie, I think it's a bad movie. I don't think I get anything from watching it.
I'm curious if there's
the movie
anything.
should have been an email.
I guess. Well, now I'm curious as to like, is there anything specific in mind that you mean? Because I'm trying to even go back through it in my head. It's like, I wouldn't call this fantastic. Like it truly, it's clear that it was a bit of a lower budget. It didn't seem like it had a whole lot of, momentum behind it. It's very clear that, Kit Harington and Sophie Turner are doing this because they, don't really have a whole lot going on after Game of Thrones fell through. But I still think it's at least decent. I don't think it does anything horribly wrong, at least at the very least. So I'm curious as to where you're coming from on this one.
I feel like the first act, if we're going to divide this into, well, even 3 acts doesn't really make any sense. I'll split it into halves. If we're looking specifically at the first half, I think it's really muddled, and it drags. It is just annoying to watch, and it's my okay. Some of this is personal preference when it comes to the way a story is told. I can see that, so I'll kind of put that to the side for now. My main complaint is that I think the movie's kind of ugly. I don't think it's shot particularly well. Yeah, I said I think some of the nature shots, some of the landscape shots, once we get outside and we're frolicking about, primarily with Sophie and Kit, as we sort of meander through the plot, I think some of those are really beautiful. But for the most part, I just didn't really care for looking at this. And part of that might be because, and again, I'm trying to keep this in like am I thinking of it as a movie, or am I comparing it to Onibaba? And I developed a lot of these thoughts. Having watched The Dreadful before revisiting Onibaba, so I didn't remember a lot about it, which is kind of what I wanted to do. But going back through Onibaba, I think that the thing that really strikes me as the way it adapts the parable and kind of puts it in sort of a horror light, which is, again, that's that's something that I have a subjective lean towards, is horror. Is it has such a fantastic use of space, the environment, and it's deliberately shot in a way in black and white, on black and white stock, so that the shadows bring out not just the way the movie looks, but also character motivations, emotions, what characters are feeling without them having to state as much. And this is something that when I mentioned something like this before, and it's like, oh, well, I mean, Japan, they were behind America, and it was black and white because all the Japanese movies were black and white. The first Japanese color movie was 15 years before Onibaba, and they were consistently like, this is a choice stylistically.
It's very, very Raging Bull style, as it were.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, fair. And I will say, I will give it that The Dreadful definitely does have a bit of a problem with tell, don't show when it comes to a lot of people's motivations. A certain amount of it makes sense, given a lot of it's like, there's a few moments where it's, Anne literally, at one point, it's literally Anne in prayer asking for guidance and being like, hey, why the hell are you doing this shit to me, dog? And in that case, it works fine. But in other cases, yeah, it does at times get kind of weirdly common about just kind of making Anne just state her motivations and her feelings about the situation. A certain amount of it, which we could kind of assume, if anything, I feel like she doesn't really address the fact of, hey, my mother-in-law is helping me murder innocent people, and that sucks. Like, even in Onibaba, at the very least, it was pretty much just soldiers they were killing. At a certain point, like, yeah, you can kind of get it at that point, because in most cases, soldiers in that period were just going to kill anyone and take everything. So, yeah, there's not that much of a moral quandary in that immediate instance. In The Dreadful, they are killing... The first person that she witnesses Morwen kill is explicitly a priest. So that's kind of hard to really justify, even if he is being kind of a, shady guy about it.
Yeah, I would say she actively embodies the literal Onibaba translation of, like,
yeah,
devil woman, hag woman,
yeah, straight
devil
up.
hag. So kudos
say,
on that, at least.
I did love Morwen as a character. I do think she kind of perfectly encapsulates the villain for this whole thing. And I like how even in Onibaba, like, there's a little bit of give and take at times of like, yeah, okay, the old woman has a bit of a point. Maybe her running off to, screw this deserter guy isn't great. And obviously she still does that in The Dreadful. But Morwen is just explicitly evil and straight up devilish for like through that whole thing. Um, so honestly, I still just kind of like how much she just is that unironically throughout the course of the film. Um, I will also say I do also like to that end because the notable change they did in this is that in the original Onibaba, the masked soldier is just some random masked soldier, and we don't have a direct connection to him. At least I don't think we do. I can't remember if it's meant to be implied to be her son or not, but I doubt it is because he didn't recognize her. Um,
No, it's directly mentioned that she states when he dies, soldiers like you killed my son. There's no direct connection at all.
right, right. But I do like what they changed where they made the masked knight. They made the knight in the Dreadful, the Morwen's son directly, because one, it adds an actual connectiveness to the story that actually helps bring it together in a way that I think feels a bit more satisfying than even Onibaba did, because Onibaba did kind of have a feeling of, certain things that felt like literally Hachi just kind of gets killed like it's nothing. Kind of feels like, okay, they just need to tie that loose end up. Um, and with, Seamus being the knight in the Dreadful, it also gives over the implication that, oh, that murderous rage is genetic. That's he takes after mom with that whole attitude. And I don't know, for some reason really liked that background implication of just, yeah, this is just what these people are like. It's not some matter of, selfish and degree. It's like, it's literally in their blood that they are horrific people. And it only just gets brought to the surface with one, the war, and two, in a figurative sense, the wartime, and in a literal sense, the helmet that they put on. So I really like that, honestly.
Mm-hmm. I think that I think that it's a good narrative tie, and I like the fact that they try to build that up as well. I think it's one of those instances where two things can be simultaneously true, in that I think the actual procurement of the mask or helmet in the case of the Dreadful and what it means for the main character, I think if anything that works in both movies for completely different reasons, because I think the Dreadful is it's kind of it more or less is based on that parable, but it is trying to do a more character focused study
Yes.
of like this particular family and the relationships that they have, specifically, mother and daughter-in-law, mother-in-law, daughter-in-law, you want to say.
Right,
um
right.
Onibaba definitely does have that too, and I do not want to play it off as if there aren't familial ties of a different culture that are driving a lot of the motivation that's happening in the movie. But the I think it works that the soldier is just sort of a random nobody, and there's kind of, on two fronts, there's an implication that he was also cursed with the mask prior to her receiving it, and then she was cursed by the rain, because less of it being tied to anything less of it being tied to any actual connection to the individuals or the mask itself. It's a punishment for sort of giving into your urges and your instincts to be a selfish human being, as per the original parable, and something that everyone sort of lost themselves within the war. Not to mention the fact that, I mean, the specific stylization of the blisters, the warts, and the tears, behind the mask are literally directly influenced by the fallout from Hiroshima and
Yep.
Nagasaki.
Yep.
So,
The good old, Godzilla design ethos.
yeah, that good old standby, which I think is fantastic. Also, before I lose sight of it, I wanted to sort of explain my piece, because I was saying I think that the Dreadful looks ugly. I don't think it's particularly well shot for most of it. But there are some scenes that I think are really well done, and I posted one in the call chat and Discord. I
Yes, I
think
saw.
most everything with this kind of color contrast is beautiful, and it reminds me a lot, honestly, of the poster from months
No.
ago when you first posted the poster to the Discord, and I was like, oh my god, that looks rad as hell.
Yeah, the original poster teaser that they showed was it kind of evokes like kind of that old heraldic styling of it is an all green like painted background with just the silhouette of this kind of serpentine helmet that the knight wears, and it's beautiful. Like it's evocative of a style of a time period, and it does it really really well. And as you mentioned, yeah, there is a few shots, especially when it's focused on the knight specifically, that really embodies just this feeling of horror and vileness that's going on in this whole situation. And I kind of, it's worth mentioning straight up, like the primary, color focus here is the color green. It is central throughout the entire thing, both with the forest that they're in and just with the demonic nature of this night, where it's meant to be evoking literally the serpent of of Adam and Eve more specifically than anything. um and then just also calling to the fact of just demonic forces as a whole, and greed, and greed is the color of green and that sort of thing. And it does that in a few occasions extremely extremely well, like you said.
Mm. I like the fact that green is it's evocative of greed and also envy, which are
Hmm.
probably the two biggest things that Morwen as a character, and you could say by extension her son, as much as we know of him,
And
that
Yago.
is sort of their. Well, yeah, a good chunk of the characters will say. Um, I mean, both of those traits they fit to a T. Like anything else, it's like, I mean, lust. Everyone's lustful. Who really cares? Wrath, not really. There's,
I mean,
I
like
mean,
I mean the
there's
dude.
anger in,
I mean,
but
Seamus is definitely murdering people left and right. I think I'd say he counts for wrath.
is wrath just straight up murder, or is there because Morwen murders plenty of people? Is there wrath motivating those
Her, it's main.
killings?
I think it's her. It's just greed. I think Seamus just loved the fucking fight.
Yeah,
Like, yeah, I'm sure there's some sort of. I will say the
maybe
seven
that's
deadly
lust.
sins thing is kind of tried to death, but
Yeah. No, I hear you, and we won't linger on it too long. It's just I really I'm not an expert by any means, but if this podcast has shown anything, I think that I'm a big fan of color theory, and
yeah, for sure.
that's why when things are shot subparly, it gets on my nerves, or why I hate like an entire decade of sci-fi movies because they're just blue. You know,
Oh yeah.
uh, things like that irritate me more than other things. I think.
No, that's fair. I man, of course now that you've mentioned all these things, I'm like, yeah, man, I do wish that coloring and everything had been a bit better on point with the dreadful, because I really did like whenever it shone through really well, like all of the various elements that it went through in the film. And I've talked about the dreadful so much just because Onibaba is like I need to talk about Onibaba a little bit, in the simple fact of I don't really care for how the story is told in this case. I think it feels a bit disjointed at times. It does just kind of feel like, especially the first time we watched it, I was very confused as to a lot of different plot points. And I'm sure that's just a difference in filming style and just, I have the privilege of being in the modern age where a lot of stories are very kind of, if not handholdy, at least a little bit more straightforward. Um, Meanwhile, the emotional peaks and valleys in Onibaba are a bit more sporadic. I mean, it's the fact that, like, I mean, the biggest one for me is that literally just like Hachi, the guy and motivating factor behind the young woman's escapades, just kind of gets killed off like it's nothing. I'm sure is meant to be have a deeper meaning to it, but in the case of a film, it just kind of feels like, okay, they just didn't know how else to end this character's plot line, so fuck it, I guess. Um, that's probably the most explicit example of it, but even then, a lot of the early moments between the young woman and Hachi just kind of feel disjointed to me, and I could never really reconcile that style of telling the story for me. That's why I think I prefer how the Dreadful paced it for that very reason.
Mm. I wish I could. I wish I could reach inside your head and see specifically what you mean. But I think that that's probably just a difference in watching because I
Yeah,
didn't. Well, with the exception of the death thing, I do know where you're coming from, specifically with Hachi, but also with other characters, and I sort I sort of rectify that in my mind of just generally being like the killing in war and around war is senseless in and of itself. But from a
yeah.
storytelling perspective, it is very abrupt and I don't know, oblique. Can we use the word oblique?
And I can't
I
even say
will say that.
I can't even say I disrespect it as a choice. It's very sudden. It feels like, yeah, like a punch to the face kind of moment of like, oh yeah, we're in the middle of a war right now. I kind of forgot about that. Um, but even still, it just kind of felt dissatisfying, I suppose, in a way. And I know it's not necessarily supposed to be satisfying, but when you have a character that's central for so long, just kind of get to the boot like that, it just kind of feels a bit jarring. Um, and I do, for as weird as the ending was in the Dreadful, I do like how it decided to wrap itself up, at least at the very end, still mixed on actual demons being involved. But the idea of Anne actually finding her independence and realizing it's not about just belonging. It's like she wasn't she wasn't gaining anything by letting herself be owned by someone else. She's doing these things because she wants to and she feels it's the right thing to do. So she decides to stay with Morwen not out of obligation to her, but out of a genuine pious desire to assist this now disfigured woman. And I think a certain amount of a certain amount of sense to it with the story that they were trying to tell, with it being centered on, like very explicit, Christian, like tales of Christianity at the times. Um, feels very Joan of Arc kind of level stuff. Uh, and I prefer that to the ambiguousness of the ending of Onibaba, at least. Just because, like you said, it is a very character-driven one in the Dreadful, and so actually seeing the characters resolve into into the ends of their arcs is like actually it's pretty satisfying for me. It's small, but it's something.
Mm-hmm. If there's anything about the ending of Onibaba that confuses me, it's very. I actually see most of what they're going for. The thing that I can't really clear up in my head is it ending on her jumping over the pit.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think when we first watched it, the idea is like, oh, it's ambiguous whether she made the jump or whether she fell in, but I really don't think that's the point on a second watch, especially with the entire build up to the chase and the fact that she's screaming, I'm human, sort of is supposed to contradict or her come to terms with internally the fact that they're in the midst of a war and she has been committing crimes against people that aren't even necessarily soldiers, some of which are soldiers, but a lot of a lot of motivations for people being involved in a war are ambiguous anyways. And
Mm-hmm.
so, are you a human because you engaged in these acts willingly for your own selfish gains? And also the marred aspect of her face due to the mask and, Hiroshima, Nagasaki symbolism or whatever. There's also the
Mm-hmm.
plea of, I am human, I'm not a demon, I'm human, sort of parallel with the disfigurement that has been caused by A, her selfishness, and B, the war. And I think all of that is really beautiful in the ending, in how it comes together. I just don't understand the jump over the pit. And I feel like I'm missing something uh, with that one specific moment that is really it's keeping the ending for clicking with me totally. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure it's meant to be that. I think the fact of like seeing her fly over the camera so many times, I think it's meant to just evoke this feeling of franticness that she's feeling. And so I don't know if there's really meant to be a true resolution to the moment. It's really just meant to be that emotion that it's driving at of, like you said, yeah, I'm coming to terms with that I am a horrible person, but it's equal parts. I'm coming to terms with the fact that I'm a horrible person, also with along the lines of, you can't blame me. I'm a normal human being. I'm not a demon, even though she's while refusing to acknowledge that she is a pretty horrible person. So I think it's meant to be just so much of that clashing feeling in the end of just, her desperation in the moment, and like also just showing off the fact of like, oh, I'm a human being, as we see her flying across the screen with a horrible face. It's like, I don't know, lady, you look like a demon in this moment.
And I mean, maybe it is as simple as that, because she looks like a demon. She's flying in the sky, and she's flying over the pit of, some bodies.
Bodies she
where
put
bodies
there.
have been dumping. Yeah, so maybe it's as simple as that. Because again, on second watch, I realize, it's not supposed to be an ambiguous, like, did she make it or did she fall in, like we originally had thought when we first watched this. I get that, but this whole time I was trying to be like, okay, but the jump over the pit is very, it has to, the jump over the pit has to mean something, and it could just be as simple as feeding into the bigger picture of what's going on, of what we've already described. So I like that reading. I like your reading there.
Yeah. And I feel like that should encapsulate the fact of, as much I've been talking about The Dreadful, I'm been talking it up, I do love Onibaba. I think it's an incredible film, and I think everything you've said about it is completely dead on the money. It is such a visually stunning film. I mean, even just having moments where we're just sitting there watching just the tall reeds of the area they're in, which are just suffocating as an environment of just like, it's just this tall grass everywhere at all times. It just creates such this claustrophobic feel to the whole situation that, for as good as the forest is in The Dreadful, it's not nearly the same. Not least which for the fact of, we see them interacting with so many other people. Like, they go to church, for God's sake. And that does kind of undercut that feeling of desperation that Onibaba really puts in there. Like, it makes it feel like, yeah, these two are the only people on the planet. Like, no wonder they're killing anything that comes by here. So it makes the environment itself makes the feeling of these characters a lot more, if not real, at least it makes sense in the universe they've created. And it's so hard to not love that at all times. Like, literally, it's the fact that it's so suffocating. Like, their house is made out of the reeds and everything, and they're surrounded by it at all times. The fact that they have to have a guide to get through there so that people don't fall into a pit, kind of thing. It's like, holy shit.
I also just like how both of these movies deal with sexuality, obviously, because that's sort of a big core tenet of the characters. But I love how horny Onibaba is.
Oh my god, it is unabashedly so.
Of all the symbolism in Onibaba, the least subtle is after one of her first rendezvous with Hachi. She goes up and starts rubbing on this tree, and the camera just pans up on the tree really slowly for like 10 seconds. I'm like, oh, this movie's horny, and like zooming in on characters' asses.
Man, we wouldn't see the horniness in black and white of this degree until The Lighthouse.
Yeah. Ew.
Ew.
But yeah, oh god, I love that too. That really clicked with me this time.
There is a certain amount of deep respect that comes from a movie that is well made, and also you can tell is explicitly horny, like, it's such a sign of a very well-rounded creative to create something like that, for them to go like, yeah, sexuality is an extremely omnipresent part of life, and we're not going to shy away from it this time. And in fact, we're going to make it ridiculous. We're going to make it so ridiculous it comes back around to kind of being profound, which is like, okay, cool. Meanwhile, my god, The Dreadful itself still feels like it's being fucking pious, even with its sex scenes, or lack thereof.
To a degree, yeah. I think you are supposed to at least recognize the hotness of the knight.
Yeah, that for sure. That the knight explicitly, at least whenever he is first born, as it were, it's hard not to be like, oh yeah, this guy is meant to be about as much of a this guy's a sex icon as much as a demon. And I don't know. I just wish that it had leaned into it just a bit more for for that fact. I think like I know again the story they were trying to go for in the end was like, Anne herself was meant to be evoking, the Virgin Mary. She's, the Virgin Mary is brought up a lot throughout the course of the film. And she explicitly prays to her on multiple occasions. Um, and which is fine. I think it works for the story, again, for the parable as a whole. But damn if it doesn't just miss out on such the pristine, horny joy that Onibaba seems to have with itself.
Yeah. And
It is
I know some
it
of
is a
this
thing of
is just
respectable beauty.
some of this is cultural distinctions too. At the end of the
Right,
day,
right.
not that we can't be horny. I know that, but
Good lord.
oh man, there are a number of things that I wish with the dreadful. I wish there was I for as much as I don't like the ending of the dreadful necessarily, and when I mean ending, I mean all the supernatural shit, not necessarily Sophie Turner praying, Um as much as I don't care for that, I wish it's mainly because of how wishy-washy the movie is up to that point. I wish it committed to the bit or not. I
Yeah,
don't think it does itself any I don't think it does itself any favors by keeping it ambiguous and then revealing it at the end. Some movies do work that way. But this one I either wish it went whole hog or just kept it simple. Um
right. It's like the ending of Ready or Not or whatever it was,
oh yeah, yeah, no, that's what it was, Ready or Not.
where
Um
it's like it just goes
the
straight. It
horror
goes from oh
movie.
it's vague to oh no it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I do think wishy washy is the best way to describe the dreadful. It seemed like they had a. This feels like something that went through like a few renditions and it ended up just being botched together from several of them. Where it's like nobody really got the same memo that it's meant to be either all legit or all not, and it just didn't really coalesce correctly as a result. Which sucks because that means that there are a lot of bits of it that I really do like and the things they're trying to imply around it. Because I think there's a lot that can be done with, the Christian side of that whole spiritual, dichotomy and internal distress and sort of thing. Because, like, for God's sake, it's Catholicism. It's built on shame. Um, but the fact that it just couldn't find its footing for it is just kind of sad. It's like, how do you fuck that up? Like, it's Christianity. It's a story about shame and greed. Like, really?
Yeah.
It's
It
probably written for you.
it doesn't feel like it should be that complicated. It's just and again, I want to make it clear I like the I like the concept. I like the supplanting into different environments and eras and religions and backgrounds. It just didn't necessarily work for me. And I wonder if that coming in because I definitely came in very hot. I'm aware
Hmm.
with the dreadful comments. I know, but and I don't want to backpedal either because at least for me I do not like the dreadful, but there are potential in different spots. I'm not gonna lie, things that I like or almost like, or things that are almost there but just not quite. And overall, it just kind of made the movie boring for me, which is unfortunate because again, I was looking forward to this. This wasn't like another remake. Like I saw the poster, I heard the concept, I was in. You
Yeah.
know, and a
I
lot
mean,
of
it is
that,
just such a.
again, as we've talked, it's just gonna come down to some of this is gonna come down to personal preference. Even if I say something's bad, that doesn't mean that it's the objective truth. Obviously,
Right. I mean, my God. If you people are taking us as objective truths, you need to get a different hold on life.
yeah. Look in the mirror.
Or don't. Something clearly has gone wrong up to this point. Maybe you got to go look somewhere else.
Wow. Um. But yeah, I honestly I don't have much else to say. I guess that's kind of where I land. Is I like
That's fair.
Onibaba. I don't like the Dreadful. I would, if someone tried to redo this Buddhist parable in 5 years, I would think I would give it an honest shot. I like this concept just in general.
Yeah, and I will say, just objectively, Onibaba is the better film. It's more evocative. It has a better hold on what's going for. It's visually beautiful and creepy all at the same time in the ways that it needs to be. I just it I can't help but respect a lot of what the Dreadful's trying to do at the least, because there are so many moments, like I said, that are standouts, that do make sense, that do make for good film, and that in many ways, in my opinion, do better than Onibaba. But it just doesn't coalesce correctly, which just sucks because, yeah, from everything we'd seen before about it beforehand, it had a lot of potential that it just couldn't really meet. You know, it's it's cool seeing. I always love seeing, especially from Japan to America, or to America, just from Japan to like just Western cultures in general, seeing how these stories translate over in both a sense of how universal they are and also how a Western lens can look at the same story. And in most cases, it tends to make the story less profound as a result, because there's something to be said about the westernization of so many parts of world cultures that is at times a bit sanding it down, for a lot of kind of a wider audience kind of thing, which I definitely see, again, the explicit lack of horniness in The Dreadful is probably a sign of that. But it's still interesting to see it for its own sake, just simply for the fact of there are questions and stories worth asking in a Western audience that at times might be more uncomfortable. Like, yeah, a lot of things going on in this. I would have loved to have maybe taken a deeper stab into the whole feeling of like, yeah, using the church as a actively abusive cudgel essentially to keep this woman assisting in murder. It's the church can be a very abusive and corrupting influence on people, and at the same time it can be a very purifying one, as shown clearly by the end of the film. And I don't know, I just wish it had taken the plunge to really kind of jab at that as a concept rather than just kind of being its wishy-washy whatever the hell self. Like, truly, why couldn't they just lock it in of, is it an actual demon or not?
You know, I want to
Or at the very
harken
least keep
back
it
to
more vague.
exactly. I do want to harken back to something I said like 30-ish minutes ago or whatever when we started talking about this. Supernatural stuff aside, uh, and I guess some personal preference stuff about the structure of the first part of the movie aside, I think most of my problems still do come with the Dreadful, still do come down to filmic problems. I
Mm.
I wouldn't mind reading this
Yeah, fair.
at
It
all.
does have it does have a weird murkiness around it with its filming.
Yeah, I think this could definitely. I would like to see the script. I want to read the script. I'm very curious.
Yeah. I'm curious if someone has done some sort of novelization of this story in another context, but at the same time, I feel like that might not be as interesting as it sounds.
Maybe not. I was desperately trying to. I'm sure it's in some sort of adapted collection somewhere, but I could not find a translation or anything of the original Buddhist parable anywhere.
Really.
A very brief paragraph summary, of course, but I desperately wanted to read it before this episode, and I just couldn't.
My guess is that it's one of those things that's been told orally for so many years that there's no real true original translation at this point.
Oh, for sure. Oral traditions passed down around campfires or whatever you want to call it. Um, I would like to engage with it to some degree. And again, I mean, from what I've read on the Dreadful, it takes some bits and pieces from Onibaba, but it really posits itself more as an adaptation of the parable as opposed to a remake of Onibaba. So I'm like, okay, where did you guys read this? Or did
Right.
you have someone tell this to you?
Which the fact that there isn't really a consistent single source of it probably tells me all I need to know about how things came out, because if there is anything that history has told us, is that when a Western group tries to tell their own version of a very old Eastern tale, it almost never goes well. There is something about the Anglicanization of stories that just seem to make things go worse. This is how we ended up with Odin being considered a Christ figure.
Uh, but next time it'll work.
Yeah,
We'll
we'll
do
do
it
it.
then.
Yeah, the Western audience always quits just before they make it big.
The meme of the guy in the mines, but on the other
Yep.
side is the helmet.
Yeah. But it's like it's actually good. Him stopping part way is the helmet. Getting all the way through is the Hanya mask.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
Boy. I don't know how I managed to get gambler's fallacy into this.
Jeez,
I do like whenever we do the remakes of Japanese movie into Western movie, because we always seem to get very not philosophical with it, but we put on our analytical caps just a bit more whenever we do.
Yeah, it's not just like trash to trash. It there's more behind
There's
it.
meat. There's meat to this soup.
Yes, it's also been a while since we've had an episode where we so ardently disagreed. Which I
Yeah,
like.
yeah,
I
I
like
do
those
like that.
episodes.
We actually have some back and forth with that one. I
Yeah.
fully going into this one, I was so afraid that it was just going to be another case of they are so one to one, just with a slightly different time period and filter on the lens, that it's basically useless to even try. But it ended up being just different enough to work, which is
Yeah,
always nice to
they
see.
the moral is supposed to be the same with the story, but the way they go about it very differently. And it doesn't matter whether we think they do it well or not. They are different. So there's a
Yeah,
lot to talk about.
yeah, yeah. I'd say that's concise as we'll get about it. Do you have any questions for us? Because I have come up with one that's I think works a bit better here.
Okay. No, I don't have any. If I did have something, it would be a question we've done a million times over, which is like, hey,
Yes.
we're adapting the parable. What time period do you want to have it?
We're,
Dinosaurs.
well,
Whatever.
see,
I
that's the one I was thinking of originally partway through this. And I was like, that seems
Yeah.
too obvious and too easy. So I'll flip it on its head. What story would you like to be set in either of these movies' time periods?
Ooh.
A story from somewhere not in 14th century Japan or 15th century England now is set in those places, and how would you go about it?
That's
I
rough. Do you have an immediate answer?
I personally would want to have Escape from New York in Londinium. Londinium's fucking way different time period from this. But
Mm-hmm.
Escape from London, essentially in the 15th century, where London has turned into a essentially hellscape because of the wars, and they have to get, like, I don't know, the Queen of England out.
That's such a wild concept because the Escape from New York, in and of itself, is supposed to be a future dystopia. So taking a movie set in the future and putting it in the past, but also making the past a dystopia, is an insane idea.
Why not?
Not a bad idea, just an insane one.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what Trench Crusade is, if you've ever heard of that one.
Yeah, I
It's
have. I'm sure you know infinitely more about it than I do, but
I
I've
know
at least heard of
random
it. Yes.
I know random bits and pieces, but it is basically that concept of what if we set it in the past, but the past itself is dealing with its own dystopic nightmare shit.
Mm-hmm. Like
So it's
alternate
like
universe timeline.
pretty much. But even then, I wouldn't even necessarily call this one alternate timeline. Like there was enough turmoil going on during that period that I could see a story, at least contingent to Escape from New York, being able to be translated in this thing. Of like, oh, the literal heir to the throne is in danger, and we need to get her the fuck out of Dodge because there's a whole thing going on right now, and everything sucks.
Oh, you see, I was literally thinking like back in time, London, but there are like plasma guns and
skyscrapers. No, I'm not. No. I'm talking like, yeah. I'm keeping the technology of the day intact. I'm fully like,
okay.
You know, I'm fully like, you know, I'm doing it for the historical fiction of the period it's within. You know, yeah. I'm not literally picking it up and dropping it in.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I want to keep it. I want to keep it, you know, non-anachronistic.
Oh,
I think that'd be fun. And I'm pretty sure there's already been several stories of that exact thing going on in Japan during that time period, so I'm not even going to attempt that one.
Oh, probably, yeah. How about like Winnie the Pooh in Japan?
Oh, in Japan, okay. Like during the Onin Civil War, or whatever this one was.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I am curious to would Owl
Tigger
be like a
out
heron?
in the rice fields? I guess so. Yeah, heron. A lot of these would still work. We could have Pooh as a sun bear. They have boars, you know.
100-acre Elmwood.
Ooh. But also the events of Onibaba still happen.
Like on screen, or like is that going on just like in like somewhere else?
Somewhere. Well, I was assuming on screen. Rabbit has the mask on.
The idea of the, like, you know, it's just the things of like these two things exist in the same universe.
Oh, one block down is where Pooh and the gang are.
It turns out that god damn it, it's the 100-acre reed field. Damn it.
Yeah, they're, oh my god, lots of reeds.
And there's some a few yards away, the Winnie and gang are doing their own thing from where Onibaba's happening.
Which sucks because Rabbit is literally the only one that would be harvesting that. Everyone else in Pooh fucking sucks. So they're all just laying around doing nonsense while Rabbit is working.
I hate to say this, but that is one Nostalgia Critic ass fucking comment, man. I'm sorry to insult you like that, but you needed to hear that one.
You know what? I don't care. I'll be Nostalgia Critic about Pooh all day. I think that a lot of those fuckers need to be put in their place.
Jesus Christ.
I stand Rabbit, is what I'm saying.
Isn't Rue also a farmer? Or Kanga?
No, she just sits at home and watches Rue all day. She's very stereotypical mom.
Mm.
Like, oh,
listen,
where did that boy get off to?
Listen, everyone's version of Utopia looks different, okay?
Sure. Rabbits
just happens to involve
steal from him.
Rabbits just happens to involve just a little bit of anxiety at all times. Sometimes people need that to motivate.
Should I get into socials?
Please do.
Oh, so go ahead and follow us on any of your favorite podcasting platforms. We're on the likes of Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, Podbay, Podmatic, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, but we are hosted as of right now with Spotify for podcasters. We're hosted by them. Leave us 5-star reviews and, nice comments. We like nice comments. Send us an email, theyremadeit@gmail.com, with ideas for episodes that we could cover in the future. We always like to get those and read those. Thoughts about this week's episodes in the past. What do you like? What do you not like? How would you bully Rabbit from Winnie the Pooh? Or if you just want to say hi, that's also welcome. And go ahead and follow us at theyremadeit.bluesky.social for updates on when new episodes of the podcast are going live, things that we might cover in the future, promo art, posters, and whatever else for what we've been engaging with between podcast records, and Full Circles, which are videos that I put together regarding folks that we've covered on the podcast more than once. And that is it for socials.
Yeah, the dedication you have to doing Full Circle is nothing short of, well, for me, miraculous, for the average man, possibly psychotic.
We need to archive this.
Listen, someone's gotta. And if not us, then probably someone even more autistic about it.
Yeah.
God bless us, one and all. As always, I'm your host, Stuart.
And I'm your host, Jacob.
And now I'm thinking about Merry Christmas.
We'll just do the Charlie Brown. Zoom out.
Zoom out?
Yeah.
Wait, are we being filmed?
Don't mock me. Afraid of what might happen. I don't want to be marked by a night of hell. I don't want to be cursed and dragged into the pit.
Cursed, Anna, your child.
Morwen told me that.
Ah, that hag. Doesn't know anything. Just trying to scare you.
Hell is real.
I've seen hell. It's 50 leagues in that direction. And it is real. Hell is the war between rich men and spilt blood. But this, Anne, this is also real.